So I'm going to start with an icebreaker, just a little anecdote. I go to a drum lesson every week. My drum teacher is pretty amazing, and his real job, I guess, well, they're both real jobs, but his other job is a psychologist, and he's a trauma psychologist specializing in people that suffer from AIDS, refugees, and other people that don't have a long time to live. He's a pretty amazing person. And we were chatting, and I was like melting at the drums, like in my mind. I just couldn't do the thing I needed to do. But he's like, "Are you having fun?" And I'm like, "I'm having the best time." He's like, "I know why that is." It's like, "Why?" Because you've achieved the flow state and you're using all of your limbs at the same time. And that is what the psychological community agrees, that that is the only way you can ever get happy. Like, everything else can fail and you can be sad. So, I have this plan. Tonight, when we get all dolled up, I want you to go ask people to dance. And if no one says no, come talk to me. I'll random dance with you. I will make a fool of myself and you. All right. Oh, it works, yes. Okay, I don't really like my title, because it's like, yep, they are, the end. But what that means is, like, in my history, it normally takes me 3, 4, 5 goes to make a game and get it out there. Like, the first one kind of sucks, and then the 5th one kind of sucks, and you're like, well, that's it, it's done. It's over. And I just think games are obscenely expensive to make. They cost a lot, and they cost a lot of your time, which is precious. They cost a lot of money, and they cost a chunk of your life. And I think your life is precious, so I want to make games cheaper. And I have a couple of ways of doing that. Maybe they will work. Also, these nerves will settle down soon. I'll get real comfy, because now we can talk about me. So that 25 years of making games thing, that includes the bit where I was 10 to 20 unemployed, and then there's like 15 years of employment. And that 10 years is like so rookie mode. It's just like, I'm just playing on the computer, making stuff. And sometimes they're games, sometimes they're like levels for other games, but it's all this kind of like building experience. And then at some point, some dickheads started paying me to do it, so. No, they're not dickheads, they're actually all lovely people. Maybe. So, I actually wrote half of this talk 6 months ago in the shower. That's where I do my best writing. You just kind of stand there, and then you wait 20 minutes, and then you gotta get clean. But it was a complete catharsis. So this whole talk is catharsis. The first part I wrote 6 months ago. Second part I wrote for all of you recently. And it's about ripping myself apart, and it's about ripping game design apart. I love being wrong. It's a good feeling. Sometimes it's cognitive dissonance, sometimes it's just you are completely wrong. And I love that the brains don't handle having to, what's the word for it? Not complementary ideas fighting each other. They fucking hate it. And so you actually go into defense mechanism. And I find that really fun. It's just painful. But then you go, and then you suck it up and you're like, yeah, all right, I was totally wrong. But what this does is it allows you to explore new avenues, and you can do that really quickly. It's not quite failure, because failure takes maybe a longer time to recover, but you can easily just go, yep, I was wrong. That's right, let's go. And it for me, creates an open dialogue. It creates that conversation that you need to have with people. Just to kind of make the best stuff. You don't have to make the world's best stuff, you just have to make your best stuff. It's two different things. But I think it's cool. I think I got everything. Whoa. What I think of game design is that it is just design. It's all the same kind of bit. I don't think there's anything too special about game design compared to other design. And it's sometimes useful. Like it's this novel activity you can do. You can put messages in there. You can do something you entertain people, but that novelty never goes away. It's not like designing a chair which has a function. It's just this like intangible thing, but I fucking love it. That's why I keep doing it. But it's like, it is extremely difficult, and production from start to end is like physically draining, and I want to change that with this idea. Have you felt like that? Have you ever walked down the street and seen like an advertisement and you're like, who the fuck made that? Who the fuck said yes to that? It's like, how? Why? It's just like constant change, and it's like, oh, yep, we're gonna print that and stick it on a building. It's like, what? It's like, you're just kind of making up bullshit, and someone says, yep, do that, and you're like, really? All right, fine. Okay. But if I was to define design, it would be something like this, something like it. It's not in the dictionary, because the word design comes from, it's a Latin word that I dare not pronounce. But its etymology is basically to mark or to choose. But what it really means in the dictionary is like you draw something. And I love drawing things, I'm just not very good at it. I don't tend to do that. I work in the psychology bit of everything. But for me, this is design. So like, you have to have an invention that intentionally exhibits a behavior. So like a chair, for example, you're not really going to use it for anything but sitting down. You can use it for whatever you want, but it says, go sit on me. And you go, all right, I'll sit on you. For me, like that is design. Getting people to do something is design. Otherwise, it has no purpose, then it becomes more of an art thing. And so, this is how I want to break game design. We don't actually make games. I don't think it's physically possible. We just make the pieces, and the pieces are terribly expensive. You have to put so much effort into it. And I don't know, read stuff. Yeah. But we're all working together to make these awesome pieces. And they need sound, they need visual art, they need feedback layers, they need something to make them work, which is definitely programming or some kind of interface. They need a whole bunch of love. And the reason why I don't think you can make a game is because players make the game. That's how it works. You go, here is some stuff, go figure it out, and then they start building models of how that stuff behaves. That's why when you make a piece for a game, you should put a lot of attention to it to make that piece the best so that people know what to do with it. And then intrinsically they go, oh, yeah, I'm gonna, first person shoot, I'm gonna shoot a gun, or like a conversation simulator, oh, I'm gonna have a conversation. I know what to do with these things. Yeah, I just need to breathe. But when they, hang on, maybe this is like a hard concept, but I'm gonna break it down into chess. I love chess. Some avant-garde gamers think that chess will be a perfect game and solved. And I say, fuck them. And they ignore it, but chess is wonderful. And I often play chess at the pub, because I like pubs and chess. But I don't win that often. I'm not that good at chess, but my opposition is terrified of me, because I play a terrifying game of chess. And they're like, what are you doing? But in my mind, I just want the queen to stand next to the bishop because she thinks they look nice. So I'm playing a completely different thing. So for chess, there's like, there's at least 3 games of chess happening for every one game. There's player 1 game of chess, there's player 2 game of chess, and then there's the observable game of chess. So everyone's going to kind of make up what they think that game is. So when someone goes to make a chessboard, like the idea of chess is already established. People are going to invent that game, but the attention to detail is going to be in all of the pieces. And I think it's incredibly important to focus on those kind of details rather than big ideas, because the big idea doesn't matter. It's only intended behavior that matters. So caveat with this, okay, your big idea might matter a little bit, but in the scheme of things, the things you should concentrate on is like, no, if my game is on the moon or Mars, that's not very much of a difference. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. What are you doing on the moon? What are you doing on Mars? That's what matters. Because I have another parable. Yeah, I kind of learnt this lesson 17 years ago or something, maybe 20. I was in IRC and I was really excited about my big idea, and I was just telling this person a story. And it was about like, there was like ninjas, which are awesome. And there was like samurai, and there were monsters. And then there's all this stuff happened and betrayal. And then the person goes, yeah, but what do you do in the game? Like, I don't care about your story. It's like, oh, or you run on walls and you cut people up and then, you know, climb some shit. He's like, oh, that sounds sick. That's what I'm doing in the game. This is the behavior that you have to kind of craft. So I think your little idea matters. It matters a lot. It matters like silly, fucking tiny little gems of abstracted behavior. That's my thing. Yeah, it's kind of like this novel extracted behavior from your real life. There's just this thing you can do and thing you can isolate, and you put that behavior in the game, and then you start crafting all of these pieces around to tell people how to behave like that. Because when someone buys a game or downloads it or starts playing it, you're asking them to do this one thing over and over and over, and you're obfuscating it every single time. You're like, maybe try it this way, maybe try it that way, but there's this one little behavioral nugget in every single game that you're doing. Like for a first-person shooter, you're always moving a mouse and typing on a keyboard. That's what you're doing. You're controlling a little camera. Nothing else changes. So how do you make that, how do you stop that from becoming repetitive? And you need to craft really awesome pieces and get it out. Get your ideas out there, but concentrate on how good that tiny little piece of behavior is. But I always find like games weird. It comes down to do this weird bullshit you'll never do in your life, and I'll give you something you don't need. But that's how you create fun, because there's a mildly okay definition of like objective fun, which is like any disruption to a routine. So when the behavior becomes routine, it stops being novel, and you need to disrupt that. But I think that's when you're winning and you're on the right track. You've started crafting. You've honed one behavior, and only one. Games shouldn't be so complex of where you have to behave in all of the ways. I think I move. Does that kind of gel with everyone? Because I'm going to start talking about production stuff. So I don't think your scope is, it really isn't the game, it's what's in your game. Because when you say, well, how big is the game? It's like, no, how much stuff are you putting in the game is a better way to phrase that. And the quality of that stuff is the best you can do. The more money and time you spend on the stuff, the longer the game is going to take. And so if you are restricted by time and budgets, think about scope that way, what you're putting into it. I wrote something down. You should identify what pieces are more important to the player exhibiting the desired behavior If the player isn't doing something with it, why are you spending time and money on it? So it's not really features, it's the manufacture of stuff that fucks up games. Because the feature is like intangible. It can be a small piece of AI, it can be a large piece of AI. It depends what you really want to do. And that's just code at the end of the day. It's like, oh, this feature works. But it's the manufacturer of all the pieces that you need to feed into that feature that gets tricky and complex, and you need to reduce that risk the whole time. Does that make any sense? I hope so. And there was one reason I'm using the word manufacture, because I don't want to use the words like process and pipelines. I think they're something else. I'm talking about the whole thing, because when you ask someone to be like, oh, hey, can you make me a character, please? And they're like, okay. You're asking them to, you're asking them to go through a pipeline, but it's the whole manufacture of all those pieces. I've lost this slide. I don't want to talk about it. Just be careful with your money. So this is like a big thing of mine. No one kind of production works. Like if someone comes in and they're like, do it like this, don't fuck themselves. Everything needs to be adaptable, because every game is going to change, and you need to, like the kind of polar regions. Do you do constant iteration loops, or do you waterfall everything, or do you do a combination of both? And it depends on the people. But my biggest problem with production is that it affects people's lives, and you need to really think about how you're managing people and your time and your money. And your production matters, because your production is going to lead to the manufacture of your game, based on that tiny little behavior, that little nugget. So I just want to talk about iteration, because iteration is my preferred style of making a game, but that doesn't get it out the door. I just stay in perpetual hell for ages. So the way I think about iteration is that, when something tragic happens and then you start crying and you think you've stopped crying, and then you have that big heave and you start crying again. And you're like, when will this stop? The answer's never. Like, it never ends. Someone needs to tell you, it's like, pens down, Jimmy, you're done. And I'm like, all right, I guess that's fair enough. But if you ask anyone to iterate, this is what you're asking them to do. You're asking them to work a whole bunch, and then it's like, now we'll do another iteration. Now delete everything you made and start again. It's not a fun process. It's gut-wrenching. You just like, is it good enough? Is it good enough? Is it good enough? Is it good enough? This kills people. But then you've got your kind of necessary waterfalls, and I've just noticed that my waterfall looks like Trump's hair. Whoops. When you waterfall something, you just need to make sure that you know the cost of everything that you're making. So maybe you're making based on the value of what it does to the player and that single behavior that you've identified. That's kind of how to cost out something. So the more, and it's a vicious cycle, the more money you spend on a little piece to add to your game, the more a player should use it, therefore the more money you should spend on it, because the players are using it all the time. And you just kind of have to decide when to kind of stop and be like, no, this is how much this fish costs. The fish costs about, I don't know, $1,000 to make. But this thing over here that has no price on it, we're just going to make it awesome all the time. And you need to know how you're going to do it as well. So you could be like, let's make 50 fish, and they all cost $1,000. And it's like, why? Why can't we just make one fish and retexture it and get it cheaper? And this will save people time and stress. But again, it all depends on what you want to do. are fish important to you? Maybe you could just delete fish. And that way, that person doesn't have to make any fish, because that's going to be dull. That's kind of my catharsis bit. This bit's for you. We're halfway. How much time? Oh, we are halfway. Fuck yeah, I'm on time. This is the fun bit. So the logic erasers, there's lots and lots and lots and too many, and I'm adding one. Little game design tricks. You can use the book of lenses, and you can use atomic design, and you can use all of these like tricks and tools to make your job a little easier. So I've got another piece of shit to put on that pile. And I don't find that people use logic erasers or philosophical erasers that often. And my favorite, as an example, is like Hanlon's razor, which is never assume malice when ignorance will suffice. So if someone crashes into you with, you're driving and they just bop you, it's not because they hate you, it's because they're a dick. And the other favorite razor is the calms razor. So when presented with competing hypothetical answers, choose the one that makes the least assumptions. And so not all of these are written as razors, because razors are kind of dry. But I hope these are kind of fun tools you can use, and I hope I can crack a few more jokes. Yeah, I like this one. This one's my favorite. This one you can dismiss stuff easily. You know those meetings you have, and then someone walks in and they're like, I've got this new idea, and you're like, fuck. This is really hard, and you're making your life hell. Which I do all the time, because that's my job. But you got to back it up. Like, just because you want something to exist doesn't mean it should exist. So we're making a game about fishing, and you're like, let's put a car in it. And you're like, all right, where are you going to put it? It's like, are you going to drive to the fishing hole? No, you're just there. Done. Just dismiss it instantly. Just get rid of it. Be a trend kill. Oh, this is going to maybe offend some people. But if someone comes up to you and says, let's make a battle royale. Just dismiss it instantly. Or if they're like, oh, I'm going to put an RPG in your definitely not RPG game, because stats are shit. Just get rid of it. Just like, no, I don't want your Dark Souls. I don't want it. And it's like, and it's done. So like, just because something's trendy doesn't mean you should put it in, because it takes forever to make that shit. Like, if you want to make a battle royale, yeah, sure, you could fucking spin up some asset store bullshit, and then, oh look, it's done, and it's a pile of shit. It's like, we did it, team, did it together. But if you want it done really well, you're gonna miss the trend. So there's no point in doing it. I find trend hoppers to be more like vultures. Yeah, just don't let outside trends ruin you. If it is trending, if you know it's trending, it's going to go away. So you start trends. That is the worst picture of Gollum I could find on the internet that matched my aesthetic. My precious, do anything to keep it. I'm referring to this one behavior, this one thing that you are asking people to do over and over and over again, and you are asking them to spend a lot of money on it. Hold on to that idea. That's your nugget. That is your dream. That is everything. And whatever you need to do to make that behavior exceptional, do it, but don't lose sight of it. And if it's not working, you just kind of push it off the table for a couple of years. Maybe it'll come back. Maybe you'll reinvent it. Maybe you'll do something. As a person that has way too many game ideas, I just give up, because it's like, oh, well, I'll die, and then that's it. There's not enough time. So I've learned to just get rid of them, and don't really hold on to stuff unless they're kind of personally educational. It's something you can work on over and over and over. But if you're on it, stay on it. Just have a little trust in yourself. tried to find a Captain Planet, but I didn't. I failed. Reduce, reuse, and recycle. So your pieces that you put on the game are really, really expensive. They're going to be the most costly thing. You should find out how to reuse them because games are cheap. Remember that people make up the game. So if you just have these couple of like rule arbitrations and you change them up and you put different values on them, people are going to invent a new game in their head. Yeah, this is kind of what I was mentioning before. Game pieces are expensive. And you need to bring those expensive pieces to the forefront. People should be using them all the time. They should be critical to what you're putting in the game. Yeah, but like I said, it's one of those chicken and egg things. The more expensive you make it, the more people want to use it, the more expensive it gets. Yeah, definitely. Like what I said before, make new play with old pieces. So the reduce and reuse recycle one was like, use the pieces again, use them over and over. Try to make a game that you don't need to ask a team of artists to spend 5 years of their life making. You can get a game out probably a lot better and more efficient if you just kind of, what's the word? Reuse those pieces. But to make new play with old pieces is like, how do you really bring that to life? How do you create two games, game modes? How do you create a sequel? How do you do anything? You can reuse your stuff. You can reuse your pieces, even if they're abstracted pieces and they're not the same. They're still the same kind of idea. You might want to make a new model for that, but it's the same kind of token on the board. It's Groundhog Day. Also the worst picture of Bill Murray I could find. Repetition, repetition, repetition. Just remember that if you aren't repeating a behavior, then why is that behavior in the game? There's a song about this by The Fall. It's called Repetition. Like if you're making stuff and you're not getting players to repeat that behavior with it, you might have spent your money wrong. Reinforce your expected behavior. So this is different. My next slide is feedback, but this is different to feedback. Reinforcing expected behavior says, please do this again. Please do it again. Please do it again. Please do it again. Please do it again. Because players they're doing the same physical action over and over in your game. And it doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to be a video game. You can put this in a board game. It's like you roll some dice, you move a token. You roll some dice, you move a token. You roll some dice, you move a token. It doesn't matter what the game is. That's what you want people to keep doing. Make feedback. Spend money on feedback. Because that's the thing that says you did something right. You did that behavior correctly. So whenever decisions come up and it's like, oh, what should we do about this feature or this game piece? Probably make it feedback. If it's not working, put more feedback on it. If it's not working, take feedback off. Try to get the feedback correct so that that one consistent behavior is followed. Cheat to win. It's good. It's very good for you. I don't mean like steal stuff. I just mean, and I don't mean cut corners, and I don't mean, what is it? I don't mean write bad things. I mean like, let experts be experts. If you're not an expert in something, just get something from the asset store. It's gonna work out better. Because otherwise you'll have to spend money on research. And maybe that's not research you really want to be doing. You're going to have to spend money on upkeep. So using expertise, that right? Is that a word? Is probably going to be beneficial. You can consult, or you can grab middleware. I totally recommend that. It'll save you a whole bunch of time. You might eat some debt because it's a hard tool to use or something, but it's probably easier than writing it yourself. And every game uses middleware. Every game cheats to win. I like this slide. I need to say this very clearly. Don't be a can't. Be a can. I don't like it when people they come in and they say, you can't do something. And it's like, no, I'm not. No, I'm an adult. I pay my taxes. As long as I'm not violent, fraudulent, or prejudiced, I can do what I want. Be a can. Be supportive. Be really nice to people. And be like, how can we do that together? Don't jump in and be like, nah, you can't do that. It's like, because you can. Ask yourself if you're sweating the details enough. How important is this thing? Oh, wait, I have to go? Oh, I didn't see you there. I'm sorry. Can I have one more minute? Can I have one more minute, everyone? Yeah. Outvoted. Democracy reigns. I'll be quick. There's only a couple more. So details. Just make sure you're putting the detail in the right spots, because if you don't, then someone's going to stop behaving in your game, and you want people to stay in your game. You want people to play it. You want them to have a good time. You don't want them to put it down. Well, actually, technically you do. That's a different talk for later. A game is a service. It's always been a service. It's always been this thing that you can say, you can tell people and be like, hey, let's play a game together. It's going to be pretty great. It's just that you have to buy the pieces. You could probably play any board game in the world for free if you had enough paper and pens, because you're inventing the game. So yeah, I think the only thing that matters is your tiny little idea. And it could be anything. It's up to you. I'm racing, by the way. I have more stuff. This isn't for questions. This is questions, like question everything. And there's a good way to do it. There's the old thing of the 5 whys. And you're like, why? And by that time, hopefully they've answered the question, or they've been able to justify their position. And I find that argumentative. It should be, oh, okay, how can we do that? Remember, be a can. That's it. Yay, we reached the morning. Thank you.